Welcome back to Duck Tank Summer. For this episode, we will be focusing on the one and only Rosie. From a general audience perspective, you will believe that Rosie is the main female lead of Thomas and Friends. But she ultimately didn't do much, like a lot of side characters in the franchise. She was pushed heavily in the last few seasons of the show, but it ultimately went nowhere, unfortunately. Well, that's the beauty of headcanon, at least, as we get to use the untapped potential and utilize to our own personal advantage, and make our own stories with it. And that's what we're doing today. Like previous episodes of this series, we'll go over Rosie's Porterverse backstory in detail, and then go over her character traits and what she's like personality-wise. I have yet to build a model of her, so there won't be any model coverage in this episode, unfortunately. But I do plan to make a model of her one day, once I find a decently priced S100. So I guess stay tuned for that. Now then, let's get into Rosie's backstory in the Porterverse. Rosie was built in late 1942 for war service. It is believed she got her name from Rosie the Riveter. Well, she has yet to confirm specifically the origins of her name, but that is a general belief theory. She was built alongside another engine of the same class. This other S100 was not sentient, however. But despite this, the two engines are gearing up to be shipped off for war service in Europe. There was one slight problem. The non-sentient S100 suffered some mechanical issues and was unable to be shipped off. And so, it was switched out with another Dark Air switcher that was in the area. Dark Air number 3, Porter, was this engine. Rosie went into war service with Porter, and the two became good friends on the transatlantic journey and talked a lot. So much so that the shipwreck had to tell him to shut up repeatedly at night. After a couple weeks at sea, the two engines touched European soil on January 7th, 1943. Rosie thought she'd be working with Porter during the war, but things went completely different from how she envisioned it. While Porter did go off into war service immediately, Rosie was put into storage until 1944, which she described as to be, quote, complete utter horseshit, and complains bitchily about it for most of it. She finally entered war service in time for the D-Day operations and survived it relatively unscathed. Following the war's end, she bounced around Europe for a bit, but primarily worked in France to help with the reconstruction efforts. By 1946, the War Department saw little use for her, and sold her to a little harbor on Sodor. The then sleepy harbor of Callan was eager to acquire its own engine, and jumped at the opportunity the second Rosie's listing was found. Rosie was officially shipped to Sodor, completely unaware of the fact that her dealer friend Porter was only down the coast on that same island. Rosie worked as the singular engine of Callan, and also served as a station pilot. Callan is a junction station, and also the terminus of the Callan branch line and the Arlesdale tramway. There were plans going around to build another branch line up the coast to Harwick. The fishing villages in the area were looking for a means of export for the fish and other goods, as the road services were very limited due to the harsh terrain of northern Sodor. Several proposals were made by the northwestern region of British Rail, but were vetoed at the last second every time. This lack of progress led to the people of the fishing villages and Rosie to be very annoyed, as Rosie was promised a job of construction assistant for the branch, but that job was being taken out from under her wheels again and again. And all these tensions grew and came to a head when Oliver's escape revealed the true nature of British Rail. The whole thing eventually led to the passing of the Sodor Railway Preservation Act of 1968. Basically, every railway in Sodor was no longer affiliated with or operated by British Rail whatsoever, and they are now free to expand as they please. And Rosie was finally given a job of building a new branch line, alongside a newer, slightly more arrogant engine. When the branch finally opened in the 1970s, Rosie returned to shunting duties at Callan. She would eventually notice a massive influx of traffic at Callan, considering now as connecting station of 3 very busy branch lines. Rosie didn't mind it, however. Matter of fact, she found it quite entertaining. Shio worked tirelessly shunting at Callan until leaving for an overhaul in 1973, during which, on her journey down the coast, Shio crossed paths with her old friend Porter for the first time in 30 years. The two agents were ecstatic to see each other again, and they were shocked that they were both on the island of Sodor the whole time and never knew the other one was there. Porter and Rosie caught up immensely on their events during their overhauls at Crowman's Gate Locomotive Works. So much so that they had to be told to shut up by the workers whenever they were conscious. Some things never change, do they? Rosie and Porter talked about everything and anything. They talked about shunting life, their choice of livery, their differing tastes in women, etc. They talked non-stop at every chance they had during their time at the works. You can just imagine how relieved the works was to get rid of these two yappers. Rosie now always finds ways to meet up with her old friend every now and again, which is still primarily works at Callan. And that's where you can find Rosie today, happily shunting trains at Callan Station. We all know what Rosie is like. Feisty, versatile, definitely not straight, and a lot of other things. And she gets along very well with almost every engine. She has a very chaotic dynamic with Thomas. These two get along like a house on fire. She also gets along well with Duck, Oliver, Sigrid, Flora, Arthur, Ryan, and all the other engines who are regulars at Callan Station. As I've been hinting at before many times in this channel, Rosie gets along very well with Porter. Their dynamic is similar to Yuji and Nobara from Jujutsu Kaisen. They often have the same reaction to a lot of things, and both laugh at the misfortune of others. Usually salty. Whenever Rosie pops by Knapford Harbor, she and Porter will pull pranks on Salty. Salty is basically the Megami in all this. The one that's like, I'm surrounded by idiots. Poor guy just can't catch a break from these two. Overall, Rosie is a feisty type of character who definitely cherishes her friends, and is very passionate about living life to the fullest. So that was Rosie, Sodor's craziest girl. I hope to make a model of her one day, once I can find an S100 model for a decent price. Those things go for a lot of money nowadays, if you can even find one. I plan to paint the model in the same livery as James. I have yet to see a realistic model of Rosie in James's colors. I feel like it would fit her very well, given how similar the two engines are. And of course, Porter Resort Band will return once this Doc Tank Summer event wraps up. And I'll be covering James next. Cannot wait for that. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Doc Tank Summer, and I shall see you all same time next week.